Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome back to the Long Term Podcast. I'm your host, Advin Villa. Today, we have devoted mom and wife, Amber Buchaski. We will discuss motherhood and parenting, faith, and relationships. Everyone, welcome.
Yeah, it's cool.
The older I get, the more I realize just how hard it is to be a parent. Like there's so much that you guys have to deal with. Well, not only personally, because the job, just the food, the bills, then there's another human being depending on you, relying on you. It's immense. And when you're growing up, it's so self-centered, get into like bickering and fights, but then it's just
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the Long Term Podcast, Amber Buchaski, everyone.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am first and foremost a wife first. Been married to my husband for almost 7 years now. It'll be 7 years, August 26th. So
Congratulations.
Excited. Thank you. Excited for that celebration coming up, and got 2 daughters. So, definitely a mom in there as well. So wife, mom, work full time myself, and try to balance all 3 of those roles and, just enjoy every aspect of it.
What changed your mindset? So I've heard many parents talk about kind of the switch in mindset and just priorities before and after having children. What flipped the switch? What, if you could put into words?
It's really interesting. The amount of things that I think about for the greater impact, instead of just like how it's going to impact sort of my day, week, or even month. The amount of decisions or the amount of things that I do to be an example that I think like, okay, 10 years from now, how is this going to be reflected upon? How is this going to be seen? Whereas like before it was like, I don't want to say I didn't care about what others thought about me or whatnot, but it was just an in the moment thing. Like this isn't going to impact anybody on the long term. It's not going to be long term. So it doesn't really matter. It's not as heavy of a decision. Whereas now it's like all of my actions, any major decision that I make, it's like, okay, well, not only does this affect me, but what is the ripple effect or the butterfly effect that this is going to cause?
Every single decision that you make reflects back onto your children. And there's more greater impact because not only are you just worrying about yourself, there's also people relying on you, other human beings, and 10 years later that could impact their physical, mental, spiritual health.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But also as well, like, when I make decisions about my children, I only am half of the decision maker. And so although sometimes I'm the only person making the decision in that moment, I still have to think about the greater impact for Ryan, my husband. And, if I commit to something today, taking into account, like, he runs a business and he has a store that's open 6 days a week, he needs to be committed to that. How is this going to affect him as well? So it's not only just, my children, which by default I have to, but, it's taking into consideration, another person who has to make those sort of same weighted decisions on my behalf sometimes as well.
Yeah. And especially in marriage, hey, you need to be able to take in the other half's input. Because I feel a lot of, not that I have any experience, just from the adults I've talked to at work or just in some of my friends are a bit older at the gym, just the couples that do communicate a lot and they do ask for input and ensure that they're on the same page are the ones that do make it out. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. When you have an expectation of a situation or a person and you don't communicate that expectation, or you just assume that expectation is something that is shared between the two of you or whatnot without communicating about it, that's usually where like a lot of the pinch points happen, is because it's, these assumed expectations of somebody else, whereas this person never actually committed to that. And so you need to take into consideration that, like, yeah, you always just need to communicate, because you can't, even when the expectation is there, if you haven't communicated that and you're just assuming that this person knows that that's the expectation of them, there's usually going to be some friction.
Yeah, fair. And I want to discuss motherhood and parenting. So with your parenting philosophy, can you share your parenting philosophy and how it evolved over the years?
Yeah. So my girls are 5 and 3 today. And so it's definitely been an evolution. Yeah. Evolved is a good word. Of course, like, when my eldest was first born, I think I had a lot more stricter expectations. Absolutely no screen time, no sugar, like really. And in today's society, like it's hard to be fanatical with your expectations. And so, when my second one was born, I had my eldest was almost 2. And so I had already started introducing my younger one to things that my older one didn't have any exposure to until she was much older. So as my 2 children have gotten older, which they're not 5 and 3, I feel like I'm still brand new to this mom thing. But as they've gotten older, it's been a lot more accepting, like loosening the reins sort of, and just accepting to let my children sort of lead me with their development, because my 3-year-old, the advancement that she's at right now, like I say all the time, I'm like, well, she can get into kindergarten right along with her sister because she's right there hands-on with everything that her sister's doing. The only difference is that there's 20 months between them. So it's definitely been a lot of letting them sort of lead me a lot more within the last few years, especially as my older one has become more independent. I've had to sort of take a step back and trust her when she's like, let me do it, because she's actually old enough and she can do it. So, just sort of loosening it and being like, yes, you're aging like as you expect your children to. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of parents struggle with. You hear a lot of times people online like, oh, I miss my baby, or I don't want you to grow up. I think Taylor Swift does a song like, don't you ever grow up, or whatnot. Like I'm a Swiftie, like, don't get me wrong.
Is she a mom?
She's not a mom.
No?
Well,
but she has a lot of
she's
mom
a cat
fans.
mom, and like I think her fans call her mother. Like
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But there's a song, and it's like, don't you ever grow up. And I've never really resonated with that song, because like I can wait for my girls to grow up, but I can't wait for them to grow up. Like I can't wait to watch them experience like all of these things, but then also having the understanding that like I have an impact on how they experience those things. And so, getting back to like sort of that ripple effect is that like, I want these girls to grow up. I want them to be independent. I want them to eventually leave my house as they're supposed to, like, long time from now, but eventually, sorry, Ryan, if you hear this, they're going to have to move out of home. But like, that's ultimately the goal. And so the things that I'm doing today, I'm hopefully equipping them to be able to do that independently when the time does come.
Fantastic. And you had mentioned that initially you wanted to, reduce their screen time, get them out of sugar, make sure to be kind of ensuring that they do all these things and shielding them from the harm. But I've also heard that, and you had mentioned that, they need to be one day dependent.
Yes.
Independent. And right now, maybe they are a little bit dependent to you, but over time, you need to establish kind of that trust in them. Because the more I find that when you protect a child too much, it ends up harming them, because when a person isn't able to experience failure, they're not able to experience the harsh reality of life. Then when they are catapulted into the vicious everyday life, and there are people that are going to hurt them, there are people that don't have the best of intentions, you're going to trip and fall and it's going to hurt. Are you equipped with the kind of the mindset, the tools? If you're shielded the whole time, then how are you supposed to grapple with the dilemmas that do pop up?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Life is going to throw adversity at you. If there's one thing that life is going to do, it is going to throw something at you. It doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter what your parents have tried to do to shield you from that. Even if it's something as simple as, unfortunately, your family dog dies. Like, that can be pretty traumatic for some people. Like, life's going to throw adversities at you. And so, these parents that coddle their children and sort of try to protect them from those things, it makes it harder for them when they do, eventually leave the nest, so to speak, because they don't have any of those real world experiences. And, unfortunately, when you get out into society, some people aren't going to like you and some people are going to say no, and not everybody wants to share. And that's one thing between my girls all the time is I never tell them that they have to share with each other, because I don't have to share. It would be ridiculous if my mom called me up and told me, well, Amber, while you're at Advin's house, make sure you share your car with him because it's your car and you have to share your things. That would just absolutely be ludicrous. And so for me to expect my children at 3 and 5 to just give up all of their desires because sharing is what society expects them to do because they're children is just crazy. That's one thing that I've never understood. I don't know why we tell children all the time to make sure they share their toys and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong. It's nice to be nice. More people will like you, I guess, if you're nice. But when you're out in the world, you don't have to share your belongings as an adult. So why are we telling our children to just sort of pass up consent almost and just share because that's what's expected of us?
Well, I'd say to prioritize yourself first. If you have a bunch of pretzels and you're starving, eat all those pretzels. And if somebody asks if they want some, then you have every right to say no. But then if you have surplus, there's also a person can also become greedy. And even though they're already full, they still shove it all down because they don't want to give. And there's that line that you have to draw, hey, where, okay, you need to share, but it shouldn't be taken away from your autonomy, because just blindly saying, oh, sharing is caring, and then having no kind of not getting to know your child or getting to know that, oh, this is a developing brain and you need to just saying this one sentence isn't the and
the catchphrase doesn't work.
End or be all. Then it's when they absorb that and they just absorb it for what it is, it can open them up to a lot of danger and a lot of people taking advantage to, even the golden rule, be treated how you want to be treated. Okay, well, what if you don't know how to be treated well, right?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Or, alternatively, let's say we're at a museum and I'm looking at something and I'm not done. I haven't finished absorbing that information. Well, it's not fair of anybody to just say, hey, it's no longer your turn, pass it along. And it's well, I'm not actually finished with it yet. And as soon as I'm finished with it, then it's your turn and I'll share it with you at that time. But it's not appropriate for me to share it with you because I'm not done with it. I haven't even read all the material.
And being able to stand up for yourself when that conflict occurs, instead of just going, okay, here you go.
Right.
Hey, no, this is my time. And unless you got to know who you're talking to as well. If it's some crack addict who's got nothing to lose, who's probably going to kill you, then of course, to try to save your own life. But if it's a friend who's clearly narcissistic, who has a lot of insecurity issues, you have every right to stand up for yourself and have control, because a lot of people these days, especially my generation, the Gen Z, I think you're Your kids are Gen Alpha. I think that my brother too. Gen Alpha? Did I get that
Gen
right?
Alpha.
Yeah, okay.
I believe I'm a millennial. So
Yeah.
we got to skip that Gen Z thing.
The Gen Zs these days, Amber, we're a bit soft. You know, I see it in myself too. We're a bit sensitive compared to kind of the millennials, because like hearing about what you put on the responses, I feel a lot of Gen Z kids would be reduced to a puddle of tears forever and not get back up.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk to people that like have gone through adversity and whatnot, and I guess I understand to a lot of people, like I've gone through some crazy adversity. I grew up, my parents split before I moved to Alberta. So I was born in Toronto, spent my childhood in Toronto, and what I thought was like a really normal family, but like we would go to the bar as a family, and like my parents would bar. Oh yeah, we would go to the bar. We would go to the bar. Oh gosh, 7, 8, 9. Like this was like a regular occurrence. So like this was like my childhood. So,
you must have been like, okay, this is normal.
Yeah. Like it was literally like down the street from us. Like we walked there. It was very normal. Like I knew how to use a jukebox for like as long as I can remember. I've known how to use a jukebox, and like I'd put my money in it and dance and sing to it and whatever. But like and I thought that was a normal thing, like because that's just what we did. We would go, and at this time as well in Ontario, I believe it was like it was like a family bar restaurant thing, but like I mean it was really just a bar. And but it was still legal to have your kids with you as long as you were like I'm not that old, but like I mean
yeah, no, fair.
It's like right on the cusp of when things changed, I guess. But yeah, and so like I mean I seriously thought that was like a normal thing, and then my parents split when I was about 12 and I moved out to Alberta, and kind of understood that wasn't like normal or anything like that, but I didn't really have any exposure to anything else that was like not so toxic, because like what's normal? When
I was around 5, like I would hear my parents just fight about money, about this, about that, and you just kind of, when you're that age, like you don't really know what's normal because you don't have a frame of
you don't have any other reference.
And you just kind of process that and go, oh, okay, when I do play with other kids, this is probably what's happening at their house too, kind of with the same, with the diet or how siblings treat you, or just the TV shows that you watch, because you're so egocentric as kids, because you just think that the world revolves around you. Well, yeah, that's like a very bad way of empathy. It's also kind of really, it's awful to process the atrocities that do happen in these relationships that are not resolved properly, and the kids are exposed to all these traumas and all these trauma is the result after kind of the exposure to the
just brokenness, I'd say.
Yeah. It's not good.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, you know, of course my parents like are boomers. Like my mom,
traditional.
Yeah. My mom's 73 today. And so she's 38 years older than I am. Y'all can do the math on that. And she comes from like another generation where, like, I mean, parenting wasn't even like, nobody talked about parenting. You had kids. That was it. Like, that was parenting.
They had no social media. They had no TikTok or how to.
They barely even had libraries, Advent.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. Just a lot of, there's a lot of physical discipline that seemed to be kind of the norm. There's a lot of just, tough it out. Don't talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't talk back ever. That's kind of what I've heard from my parents that they've kind of switched up on, because they realize kind of the
children should be seen and not heard. Yeah, absolutely.
With the challenges and solutions, what has been the most challenging aspect of motherhood for you, and how have you managed to overcome it?
The most challenging aspect is not mimicking the behaviors that I saw growing up. Simple things like the knee-jerk reaction of screaming at my kids. Like, oh man, there are times where I scream at my kids. But I have the retrospective now to be able to go to them afterwards and explain to them why I acted like that. And then also as well, like there's many times where like I don't do that. But I understand the value of being able to admit to my children when I make a mistake so that they can call me out when I make a mistake. Like there's been many times more recently now that my daughter's older that she's been like, hey mom, I didn't like when you did that. And she can actually talk to me about it. And I'm able to take that back and work on it and change from it. But it starts with me first going to her and admitting that I've made a mistake and that, you know, I'm sorry. It wasn't intentional. And like, let's talk about this. How did that make you feel? And like, we break it down, we talk about it. And then I let her know, like, you know, you could have come to me about this beforehand if you knew how you were feeling, because that's something as well, is that, you know, sometimes as a mom, I can see how my child feels, but she doesn't know how she feels. And so I can't just say, you know, oh, well, you're feeling sad right now. I can see you're feeling sad, because she can't process that. So we have to, it's something you have to work through. And then once you build this sort of trust and this area that they feel the safe space, then, you know, it gives them the opportunity next time when sometimes I do things and I don't think that it makes a difference. And, you know, we'll talk before bed and we'll talk about how her day was, and she'll come to me and she'll say, you know, mom, when you did this, it made me feel however it is that it made her feel. And she feels valued enough that she can share that opinion with me and that I'm actually going to listen to her.
That's phenomenal. Accountability.
Oh,
that's
yes.
a lot of...
And children are so good at keeping you accountable too. And not only are they good at keeping you accountable, but they're good at seeing when other people aren't accountable. And so they know eventually, like, if you're not going to be accountable, or you're going to be like, I don't want to say shady, but like, one thing I say a lot of the time is like, 99% honesty is still 100% dishonesty. So if you're not going to give me all of the details, if you're only giving me half truths, it's actually a lie. Like, you're not giving me the full picture. So you're manipulating the situation somehow. And children are the first people to pick up on that with other people, and they'll eventually just stop engaging with you.
Yeah. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still tying its shoes. And that's lying for people can be really advantageous in the short term, but in the long term, it just builds a lot of mistrust. And when you teach kids that, oh, they don't lie, like liars go to hell.
Yeah.
Then when they sense that you are lying, when you are leaving details, when you don't take accountability for the actions that you took, then who's the real liar here, right? Then what does that teach them? It teaches them, oh, this is the way the world goes. You just tell other people what you want out of them, but then do not practice what you preach because no, you want something out of them. And it's a great way of kind of establishing misery when it comes to just developing relationships, when you do enforce lying. But when you enforce accountability, like you had mentioned, that when you do yell at, make a mistake, and then you end up yelling at them, like every parent does, because I don't think I know a single parent, or even my parents, all my friends, like there's always going to be debacles, dilemmas. And when you don't when you don't ask for forgiveness, we don't explain that to your kids, they just process that at, okay, like we're just gonna not talk about it. We're just gonna, act like it never happened. Yeah. But no, and then that's that unresolved resolution. And how is this person gonna navigate future relationships? Are they just gonna blow up with their friends and then just never talk about it? And then later on in the long term, you'd be the ones to suffer, because when they're teenagers, when they're full-fledged adults, then when sure it always matters, but when every year a person develops more responsibility, they have more things to do because they are developing, they're learning more.
Mhm.
And when it's at a stage of marriage, when it's like you're at a job, that can result in catastrophe because they might get fired, they might get in a divorce if you don't establish that virtue of accountability,
Yeah.
of forgiveness, of loyalty, and just telling the truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's always a slippery slope, like when you decide to, well, and that's also another thing. I don't think anybody ever decides to be deceitful. I think it's a behavior that's developed over time.
The system.
Yeah. I think somebody can decide to be honest, though. And I think everybody has the ability of, self-retrospection, and everybody has the ability to make a decision to change. And so, sometimes just because of environment, somebody can be a dishonest person. Somebody can be, for a lack of a better term, a bad person. But anybody, no matter who you are, no matter how old you are, you have the ability to make a choice to change and, be honest. And I talk about it all the time, catching yourself in a lie. You should always be the first person to out yourself, whether it's a bold-faced lie like me saying I have black hair, obviously not true, or, something where you're not honest with a friend about a situation. Something happened at a party and you're not comfortable with it, and you don't say something in the meantime. You can still say something after the fact as long as you're the first person to out yourself. If you are talking behind somebody else's back about how uncomfortable somebody made you, and then that person comes to you and says, hey, so-and-so said you were saying this behind your back, you can't then fess up to it and be an honest person. You're only honest if you're the first person to out yourself.
Yeah. There's also a lot of struggle in that. A lot of people don't want to tell the truth because it's uncomfortable, but you end up just sacrificing the long-term relationship just to ease your way into the short term.
We all love our comfort.
Yeah. With balancing roles, how do you balance the demands of being a mother with other responsibilities and personal time?
Well, so like for today, we made this appointment a little bit in advance, but like Ryan and I, we sit down every week and we go over our week. Yeah, so balancing the roles. Weekly, Ryan and I, we do sit down and we talk about our week. Of course, like we put the big things in first: work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I mentioned before, Ryan runs a store and it's open 6 days a week. So there are some times that he has to work Saturdays, or like tomorrow, because it's the last day of the month, he's going to have to do all of the month end closing, paperwork, accounting, and all that stuff. And so we talk about, our big things, which is our job. And then we talk about the next big thing, which is each other. And like, do we have any appointments, whether that's medical appointments or personal appointments, like this podcast that we're doing today, or just anything like that. And then the next thing naturally is going to be our children. And then at the same time, like we talk other things like, what's our meal plan for the week and whatnot, just maintaining that communication so that we know what's going on. And then if something comes up during the week, we have that flexibility because we already know what's going on, like what's going on tomorrow. If something comes up and somebody wants to do something with me, do I have the ability to be like, yeah, hey, let's get together for coffee? And I already know, well, tomorrow's the last day of the month, so it's not going to be a good day tomorrow. But Thursday's probably going to be a go. So it's always about, communicating, leaning on my husband as much as he leans on me. We're a team, right? Like we're not in this individually. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people in relationships are still so single-mindedly, like they have this union, but they don't have a dependency on that person. And although like, I'm a strong, independent woman, I can take care of myself. part of taking care of myself is also knowing that, you know, I have this amazing partner that I can lean on when I need to. But he also can only be there for me as much as he has the capacity to be that. And so for me to have those expectations again, when we haven't communicated about them, is just where we're going to have that friction. And when it's going to start to feel like it's hard, like I never get a break being a mom, or, you know, I don't have time for myself because I'm not setting that. We're not talking about that expectation of, you know, well, I need this time for myself for whatever reason. Even if it's for something, sometimes it's small enough of, I just want to go for a walk tonight on this day. And it's like, yeah, sure, absolutely. And then it rains that day. And then it's like, okay, well, we've got availability other times this week. So it's always about communicating and understanding like where I have that person to lean on. And I guess that's also another thing, is that like so many people have sort of like that village, like they always say it takes a village to raise a child, whereas like Ryan and I don't really have that village. And it sometimes can be an advantage because then it's like, it's very structured and we don't have any wiggle room. But then also at the same time, it can be difficult because then finding the balance between being a parent and being a wife is where it can be tricky, because then it's outsourcing to find that balance in that relationship there.
Yeah, being able to schedule your week in advance and being able to kind of focus on what matters by communicating with your husband. Oh, we need to pay the bills here. Oh, we need to drop the kids off here. This is happening, that's happening. And then that's open to when other things do pop up, then you can schedule podcasts. You know, you can schedule, you know, a coffee with a friend, or maybe the Zumba class or whatever, some leisure time.
Yeah.
And that's just, communication is such a powerful tool. And like a lot of people don't do enough of it. And you had mentioned that a lot of, well, you are a strong, independent woman. There's also you have a partner, and that's just in unity. You guys are a team. And
absolutely.
That's just when debacles do happen, when kind of the chaos of everyday life comes up to you guys, then you guys can set up a plan and tackle it together. Because man, it's so much easier to be able to have somebody on your team to be able to kind of look at it from a different perspective or provide other insight as to how we go about this certain thing. And it doesn't even have to be a problem. It could just be, okay, how can I improve as a person, as a mother, as a human being that can thrive and flourish in this world?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about your faith journey.
Oh, okay. So it's really interesting. So growing up, you know, in Canada, very typical. My parents never really attended church or anything like that. They both grew up Catholic. Oh, maybe not my mom. I'm not 100% sure about my mom. I know my dad grew up quite Catholic, was baptized and did communion and like a whole bunch of stuff like that, but never really enforced faith or talked about it. Like, I mean, I know we had like a cross somewhere in the house, but like never, ever talked about, like, it's not like we even ever said grace at meals or anything like that. So, as a child, like I never really had any sort of exposure to any kind of faith or anything like that. And then when I moved to Alberta, we moved to a housing complex that was subsidized housing from the government. So it was right across the street from a Christian church, and they had put out flyers to come to the youth group or something like that. And so I had actually attended a Christian youth group for a couple years, I want to say. And at the same time, I think I was in grade 8 or 9. My best friend, her parents were split, but her father was quite involved in his congregation, but he lived in Grand Prairie. And so we sort of both went to this youth group together, and we went on a few church excursions and stuff, but I never really like attended church and like listen to any of the sermon or anything like that. I think it was just more or less a place of community that I found. And they're just very warm, open, and accepting. And of course, some of the messaging still sort of resonated with me, but like I said, I never really attended or anything. But I always sort of believed that there is a greater power, like to believe that we're all here on our own accord, just la-di-da. There's no way. Like, there's a greater power. Call it whatever you want to call it. I think a lot of religious texts all have great teachings in them. Some of the best success stories come from the Bible. Some of the best interpretations come from the Bible. I was listening to a podcast just the other day where it spoke about just the first book of Genesis and about Adam and Eve and the sin. And before she bit the apple, they were naked and they weren't aware of their nakedness. And that interpretation that this person was talking about was not like physically naked. Although they were physically naked, it was naked in the fact that they had no shame and they had nothing to hide from each other, which is what a covenant between man and wife should be. You should be naked with each other. You shouldn't have anything to hide. So, that was just an interpretation I just heard the other day that was a great teaching. And so I always have had this faith that there's a greater power, and there's some reason why we're all here for whatever reason it is. After I moved to Alberta, my dad had developed cirrhosis of the liver, basically because of alcoholism. He drank himself to a state where his liver no longer worked. But because he was a father of 2 young children, he qualified for a liver transplant, actually did stop drinking and detoxed for long enough to qualify for the transplant, and went through all of that, had the transplant, was completely successful. His body didn't reject it or anything like that. But then a couple of months later, he passed away from heart failure, I believe.
Sorry to hear.
Thank you for your condolences. And so having that experience at sort of a younger age gave me an understanding that tomorrow is never guaranteed for anybody, no matter what it is that you do. And when it's your time, it's your time. And as great as medical advancements have made, we're still not the ultimate decision maker, and it doesn't matter what you do. When your day comes, your day's here. And so I think that impacted a lot of my faith journey because it's sort of like a timeline that I know that we're all on. You can't see it, but I know it's there. So faith is believing in something that is yet unseen. And so my unseen thing is, I guess it's kind of morbid, but my demise, eventually my death. I know it's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. We have no control over ultimately when it is going to happen. And so with that being said, I want to live my life so that every day I have the purest intention, so that if today is my last day, I know that when my head hits the pillow, I didn't do anything that was causing harm to anybody. And I lived my life with the best intentions. And that's really, at the end of the day, my belief of any sort of religious texts or whatnot is just really, do unto yourself as you would have done unto others. I think it's love thy brother as you would love thy God is one of the passages, totally loosely translating here. But just to make sure that you're good to people and that you are considerate of others. And so, you can only do that so much, right? You have to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and respecting your own boundaries. So I think a very pivotal part in my faith journey was when my father passed away. And then just knowing when I was a child, that I didn't want the house that I grew up in. And to the point where like I didn't want it so bad that I thought that I didn't want to like be a mom, that I didn't want to have kids. Like if that's what it looked like to have a family, like absolutely no way. Which was weird because when I was a little girl, like, of course, every little girl thinks about, having a family and being a mom and dressing up her dolls and all of those things. So, like, to be where I am today, and understand that, like, I mean, it's not that I didn't want to be a mom. It's just that I didn't want to have the life that I had at that point in time, and that my traumatic experiences or whatever it is that I went through, I had to go through all of that in order to be at a place that I would have been able to see that, you can be different than your parents. You don't have to, like, I like to say, the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree, but it's your decision to let that apple sit and rot or sprout and grow new life. And so I decided that, this apple didn't fall too far from the tree. I can still see that, parasitic tree over behind my shoulder. But I decided to take the seeds of my apple and sprout new life. And my husband and I, we are growing a new family tree, and it's beautiful and it's fruitful, and it's full of life. And I believe that at the end of my life, I'm going to be able to see that, because not only will I see my children, but I'll see my grandchildren. And if I'm truly blessed, my great grandchildren. And when I get to that point, I will have seen the fruits of my labor. And that's where that belief comes from. Like, my faith will be seen at that time.
And birds can also pick at the apples and take the seed to a far location.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Then, it's all up to you whether you want to be like similar to your parents. Sure, there are a lot of unconscious, subconscious things that you take away from the family household, from the parenting styles, and we struggle to be able to navigate life, and we try not to be like the negative qualities, but there's only so much we can do, and accepting that there is the bad involved too is like a great way of kind of just, there's going to be always good and bad in the world, and just having this faith and having kind of that purposeful mindset where, you can establish change and you can create a new life for yourself despite what you've gone through. And kudos to you for being able to propagate this entire new family. And then not only was it with just you, there was another person as well that helped cultivate that. And it's great. It's a great feeling to have that kind of love fostered. Hey, I feel a lot of people do not have that in households. And I think from deriving from my faith, I used to not be as religious, but now I believe in God, and I feel that, you had said that there is going to be a time where life is going to cease to exist for all of us. And that's a great reminder to just treat everyone with kindness every day, because you never know. And you never know what's going to happen after life. And how has this influenced your parenting and family life?
So part of it is like I said, like truly believing that I'm going to one day look back at my life and be able to see this fruitful, flourishing life that I've had. And so by believing in that, I speak about it all the time. I speak to my girls about, when they're going to be mothers one day, and when they have families, and they're going to have children of their own. And, I know this is something that a lot of us have heard from our parents. And, I know you may not like it today, but if you don't like it, you don't have to do it with your kids. You can change that when you're a parent. So a lot of it is just reinforcing to my girls that I do have a belief and a vision for the future, and just speaking about it as if it's today, because one day it will be today.
Yeah. you have this vision in mind for them, and then you cultivate that to the best of your abilities, and you kind of instill them the values that your parents had. The good, you uphold the good qualities, and
Mhm.
you eliminate the bad qualities. And
Mhm.
certainly there are going to be a time when they do grow up and they do become a mother of their own, that they can view the parenting style of yours and go, okay, they could have improved on that, but then there are good qualities that they're able to uphold. Can you share an experience where your faith helped you navigate a difficult situation?
So there's been a few different times where I've just sort of leaned on faith. Um, there's been a few times where I've just sort of had to take the leap and make a decision and just trust that that was the right decision. Um, so like growing up, as I mentioned, like I didn't want to be a mom or anything like that growing up. And because my dad died young, there was quite a lot of brokenness in our home. It was myself, my brother, and my mom. And my brother and I haven't ever really gotten along. So there was a lot of sibling rivalry. And I spent a lot of time outside of the home. And as a result, ended up in a really toxic relationship because I think I was just looking for love and affection. Like I was just looking to feel like I belonged. I'm not sure. Basically, I was quite I fell prey to a predator and was involved in that relationship for quite some time, and still maintain this belief that like I never wanted to be a mom. And towards the end of that, he had approached me that he had gotten somebody else pregnant and was hoping that I would help him take care of this child.
And how old are you at this time?
At this time, I was 19.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was quite young.
And when did you get involved with this
Pardon me?
person? When did you get involved?
My father was still alive when I first started in this situationship. I don't even want to call it a relationship because it was definitely a situation where I was preyed upon and taken advantage of. But this situation started, I'd say I was probably about 15. And so it was for quite a few years and at quite an impactful time of my life, not only because like my father, the only sort of male role model that I had in my life, had passed away, but I'm also a teenager, like super impactful and wanting to be rebellious for my parents, as all teenagers want to do. Like, doesn't matter how good of a parent you are. Like if you're a great parent, your teenager is going to rebel. Like they're meant to do that. They're wired to do it, but that's a whole nother topic of biology. Anyways, but so, when I entered into this relationship, I was just looking to feel special or wanted, or I'm not sure. And so towards the end of it, he had approached me that like he had gotten this mistress of his pregnant and was hoping that I would like help take care of this child because obviously like having any knowledge of the situation going on, if you're going to get involved with somebody who's already involved with somebody who is 14 years younger than he was, like this person wasn't of sound morals or ethics. But so he was hoping that I would help care for this child, and I said, sayonara, sucker. And I quickly gained my independence and left that situation. So it was sort of a vulnerability at the time of his, because
how did you realize? Because when you're 15, sure, you're looking for love and you just want to be able to fill that void. Because you had mentioned that it is a tough household that you grew up in, and it was a lot of it was unstable, and you were looking for this relationship to be able to fill that void. But when did you realize that, oh, this is a person that you kind of know it initially, that this is a person that was untrustworthy and
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So this person actually was brought into the home by like a family member, of course. Like they say, usually when somebody is going to be abused or preyed upon or something like that, it's somebody close to the family. And or it's close to the situation. It's not a stranger. Like most of the time, like you're not going to be lured into a white van and taken away. It's going to be somebody close to the family that already has some sort of trust established,
because the family least expect that person. How could they do that when we just had golf together, or they were just at the party? They could never. But no, that's why they're there. Or it's they surround them, they put themselves in that situation because they have a hidden agenda.
Yeah. I can't speak from that perspective. I'll never be able to speak from that perspective. But I can definitely just confirm that, like, the vast majority of the time, it's going to be somebody that already has some sort of trust established. And so like, even if it's a small amount of enough trust as, it's my brother's friend, it's my son's friend. Like unfortunately it's the reality of the world that we live in. And so, at that young of an age, I definitely never, like, it never would have dawned upon me.
Yeah, I'm sorry you had to go through that. And you're able to bounce back. I know some of my friends have been through just debilitating, kind of traumatic experiences, and it's hard to get yourself out and not get yourself out of that and not feel like the victim, because when you're so helpless and stuff like that happens to you, you're not motivated to start your own family, to be able to build a fulfilling relationship, because that thing happened. And it's like, why didn't this happen to someone else? And then you get into this like headspace of like, oh, then that means I'm broken. And what does that mean I'm broken? Oh, it means that I can't have a fulfilling relationship. But then kudos to you for not letting that eat you up. And I think you're very brave, Amber. And you have gone through this unimaginable situation, and prior to that too, just on the instability in the household, and you're able to. It's uncommon for that to happen. So
it is.
Yeah,
it is
awesome.
It is.
Congrats.
It is uncommon.
Amazing.
And it is uncommon for you to sort of get out of the cycle as well. To sort of break the cycle. And I was just like, I honestly just want to say I was lucky because I was determined.
I don't believe in luck. I think we're all capable. The things that happen in life, I'd say maybe 1% luck, but I think 99% of everything is just down to kind of the effort and just blessings. You're very blessed, I'd say.
I guess blessings can be the word that we go with.
Sure.
I was very blessed to be enlightened at that time that things can change. And at the same time as well, like when I left this situation, I was 19. And so it was a pivotal point in my life where I had full independence. I was living on my own, paying all of my bills. And I didn't have sort of any time to mess around or goof around or anything like that, because I was 19, support myself. Like when those ends are meeting, they're very tight.
Adulting.
Oh, hard time adulting. Yes. So it made me grow up really quickly, but it didn't give me any time or any sort of space to mess around and perpetuate that cycle, because I had to be responsible for myself. at this point in my life, I was no longer living at home with my mom. And so I was knowledgeable enough to know that that wasn't an environment that I wanted to live in at my mother's house. And so I had two options, really. I could continue in this horrible relationship and try to be a mother to somebody else's child, which, like, I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. Like, anybody who willingly is a stepmom, like, I can't even imagine that. The ability to mother somebody else's child is just amazing, because I truly believe that there's nobody else better in the world, more equipped to be the mother to my children than my children, or than myself. And so and I believe as well that, like, when you are given the privilege to have children, whether you want to say when God decides that you are going to have that child, I truly believe that there's nobody else that is destined to be as good a parent for that child. And then unfortunately, there are things that happen along the way where somebody decides to choose themselves over their children. I think it's an unnatural choice, but it does happen. But it's just, it's crazy to me to think that there are people sometimes that make the choice to choose themselves and understand that they're going to lose their children in like the sort of as a result of that. That's just crazy. I'm totally don't remember what the question was.
Yeah, no. Now we're just going through. It's just a conversation, right? Going through. I don't even remember what it was too.
Yeah. There was faith in there somewhere.
There was can you share an experience where your faith helped you navigate a difficult situation?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So, finally getting out of the relationship because I just was not willing to be a mother to somebody else's child. Especially because if I were to ever enter into that situation, I could never deny the mother any sort of interaction or whatnot with their child. So it just wasn't a thing for me. And so my choice was to then figure out how I'm going to make things work on my own. And so I did that. I ended up working full time at an electronics store that not only paid me a wage, but I got commission on top of that. And so because I got commission on top of my wage, I hustled hard. And because of that, I was able to pay my bills every month. And so I made the decision that, like, this is it. It's sink or swim. If I don't succeed on my own, I'm not going back to my mother's house. There was no space for me to go back to my mother's house. She had moved a couple of times over the years. And so there literally was no space for me at my mother's house. And I was absolutely not going back to this toxic relationship. So if I didn't make it, I was homeless. So I pulled up my bootstraps and I did it and I made it work. And it was ultimately the best decision for me because being so devoted to my job, I tried to pursue a couple of relationships that didn't really go anywhere. They were just sort of dates. Like I wouldn't even say I dated anybody, but I went on dates, if that makes sense. And then, just keeping my nose to the grindstone, I met my now husband where I was working. And so we pursued a relationship and started seeing each other and then started being more apparent to like all of our coworkers that, we're seeing each other. It's a thing. Yeah. And because I was the superior in that like working relationship, I was the assistant manager and he was the night supervisor. It was like, you guys can't do this. Like you either have to transfer stores or you got to call it off. Like this can't be happening anymore. And so again, I just still living on my own. We weren't living together at this time, Ryan and I. I was still living on my own, fully independently, quit my job. And was like, I I'm going to pursue my relationship instead. And so fast forward to today, obviously it was the right choice. But the looks that I got and the comments that I got from everybody, like, you know, you're going to pursue a relationship with your coworker. You're quitting your job. Like, how are you going to pay your bills? You know, like, and at this point in time, this was 14 years ago. It wasn't as easy to find a job in Edmonton. And so I got 2 jobs and I made it work. And obviously, as I said, it was the right decision. But at that time, there was so much doubt and so much fear because of the unknown. And I just had to have this belief and the faith in myself that if I make this is going to be the right decision. And it ended up being the right decision. And then again, I would say most recently, just not quite a year. Oh no, it was over a year ago now. I decided to walk away from my job at ATS traffic. And it was, I really appreciated the values of the employer and what they stood for and their message of, you know, getting people home safely every day. It's still something that I will take with me for the rest of my life. I like as a mom with a family, like every time I go through a construction zone, that's what I think. Like there's people here that have something to go home to, even if it's a dog. You know, if something happens to one of those people, and like how is that dog gonna understand that person's never coming home again because you were careless? Like ATS had some great values. However, it had become apparent to me that job was no longer fulfilling the needs that I needed it to, and I had to walk away from it. And again, absolutely not knowing anything of where I was going to go, in sort of the economy that we're coming out of with, you know, COVID, a lot of people looking for jobs because the opportunity was there to switch jobs and stuff, and not knowing what was going to happen. And now that I'm not quite a year at my employer that I'm at now. I've met some great people. I work with some amazing creative minds, and I love it. And it definitely was not something that I would have had the experience or exposure to if I didn't have faith in my decision of just going out in the unknown.
Yeah, the unknown can be quite daunting because we get so used to the everyday kind of routine of getting up and driving to work, having the same routes, and being able to be accustomed to the kind of the schedule.
We all like our comfort.
Yeah. But then it's kind of having that gut feeling of, okay, this isn't right for me anymore. Maybe it was a couple of years ago, but then things have changed.
Yes.
And I need to be able to grow. And I cannot grow in this environment if I keep doing this, then I'm going to get the same results. And I think Albert Einstein says that insanity is defined by repeating the same thing and expecting different results.
Absolutely.
Right? And you need to be able to face that unknown and be able to stomach that down, because at the end of the day, that is how we create true change, is being able to change our habits, careers, mental frameworks.
Nothing changes if nothing changes.
How do you incorporate your faith into your children's lives and ensure it is a positive influence?
Well, as sort of, to put a label on it, as sort of being an agnostic person, the faith that we exercise with our girls is more or less just to like believe in yourself, and you know, that belief in yourself. And when you're afraid that you can't do something, or you're unsure if you can't do something, you know, believe in yourself and just think about yourself being able to do it, and then keep doing it until you can do it, and have faith that you're going to be able to master that skill. So it's both my girls are in gymnastics right now, and so they're learning new gymnastic skills, and my eldest is trying really hard to do a cartwheel, like so bad she wants to, especially with the Olympics on now. Like she's just my little gymnast. And so she has a lot of self-doubt, and I'm never going to be able to do this. And, that's where it comes in. And, just have the belief, just believe in yourself, have faith that if you keep practicing, it's going to come. But faith without works is dead. So if you never do any of the work, then believing isn't going to get you anywhere. That's another thing as well, is because faith is an action word. It's not just, a feeling. It's not an abstract thing. It's something that you actually have to work at, because if you just think something's going to happen, but you're never actually putting in the back work behind it, then there's no reason for it to work.
That was a great response. I think that's just faith. That's the first time I've heard of that. Faith is an action word. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much.
No,
for
absolutely.
That. Thank you for
absolutely,
all the stories.
Faith,
that
is an action word. And I think that's part of the reason why so many religions have, weekly gatherings and stuff like that, is because you need to practice your faith. And so you're practicing faith, you're practicing belief. And so it's like practicing running. It's an action word.
Yeah. Relationships.
Ooh, juicy.
Maintaining a strong marriage. What strategies do you and your spouse use to maintain a strong and healthy marriage while raising a family?
Well, it's going to be so shocking for everybody. Communication. Coming back to that one for sure. It's always on communication. Our relationship, I would say, when we're communicating and we're talking about things all the time, our relationship is great and we're getting along great. We're both really fun to be around and whatnot. But when we start slacking on our communication and we stop, talking, or, just when our communication is lacking, like we can tell our communication is lacking because the mood changes in our relationship, and it's almost a direct result of our communication. And so, like I say, one of the most important things that Ryan and I try to do is sit down every week and, plan our week. It started with something like really small. We didn't sit down and talk about like big topics or anything like that when we first decided that we needed to sit down every week, because it's not, obviously, it wasn't something that we decided we were going to do as soon as we got together or as soon as we got married. We noticed that life was getting tough. It was getting hard, especially because we only had one child at this time. And we were looking for things to do to make our lives easier, and meal planning. Everybody always suggests meal planning. And so we're like, well, let's give this a try. And that's where it started, with us sitting down every week. As we would sit down and we would talk about our meal plan for the week. And then we would go do our weekly grocery shopping so that we're not having to go out right after work to get groceries, and because that's a time waste as well. And so it started with that. And then as soon as we started talking about, our week, because there's things that come up, if Ryan has a month end, or right now it's summer, so our schedule is a little bit more open. But throughout the fall to springtime, our girls are in gymnastics. And so we have gymnastics that we need to schedule around. And then any appointments or stuff like that, it's not as frequent anymore. But when your child is first born, it's I don't know, I feel like it's every other day you have to go to the doctor, but it's not that frequent. But it's all the time there's doctor's appointments. And then when it's not a doctor's appointment, it's a different kind of appointment. And then so once we had our second child, it was okay, we need to iron out all of these details so that we're not wasting time in the grocery store. And so that if somebody needs to watch Anastasia, because our second child was true COVID baby, conceived, born, labored, everything through COVID. And so my second, my older child couldn't come to any of the doctor's appointments with us. So even though we all lived together and basically shared the same bed, she couldn't come with us to the doctor. And it was just one of those crazy times. And so it just took a little bit more extra planning. And so by us being able to do that, it gave us other opportunities of, it's been like 6 weeks since we've gone out and done anything, even as a family, or, and that gives us the ability to sort of talk about things that could be lacking in our relationship, or alternatively, something that has happened previously in our relationship that like I really enjoyed, that maybe Ryan hasn't done for me in quite some time. Like a very simple example is like flowers. Like he hasn't bought me a bouquet of flowers for a long time. Like I'm not saying that to like drop hints or anything like that. I'm the opposite. I'm actually like, unless it's
straight up
like,
front.
Yeah. Like unless it's like, it would have to be like really an event for me to expect flowers from my husband. But, a lot of women do appreciate when their husbands bring them home flowers. And so, if that was something that I really saw a lot of value in and I appreciated, and I noticed that that wasn't something that he had done for me in a long time, that would be a time that I could bring it up and be like, hey, has flowers gone up in price or something like that? You haven't bought me flowers in a long time, or like, I mean, are you hoping to pick a fresh bouquet from our garden, or like, just it gives us the time and the space to discuss things that can be going on in our relationship, and then also as well, because we're planning for, that week out, it's like, okay, well, we haven't had that time where it's been us. So like, do we have the availability this week or next week to do something together? And then because, we don't really have many people that we can rely on for like childcare, then it's like, okay, well, if we want to do this, how are we going to do it? And then it gives us the ability to not only talk about the things that we want to do, but then overcome sort of the obstacles in our way, which a lot of the time is childcare, which also helps strengthen the relationship because we both end up having to work for that time together.
Yeah. Being able to have that space, that slotted time to be able to debrief and ensure that you guys are doing fine mentally, and if there is a conflict or there is a worry, concern, then you establish that and then you guys communicate about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you guys can just touch base, and that way you're on the same page. And even then, if you feel emotionally that you need that act of kind of the flowers, and then it's say that, because I think a lot of people, not even in just romantic relationships, even in platonic relationships, if I don't tell my friend or my sister, my brother that I need this from them, then how are they supposed to know? I mean, there are people that can empathize better than others, and they can predict your kind of based on your facial expressions. Oh, that means that there's no more Cheerios, and then to buy more Cheerios. But it's just not everyone is going to be 100% accurate. And it's being able to establish that kind of that the open space to communicate, and being able to tell people, and instead of kind of beating around the bush and making a big deal out of it.
Yes.
Because I've even just reading this book by this divorce attorney. It's called "Once You're in My Office, It's Too Late." It's
okay.
And then one of the stories there, and he just kind of the chapters are based on kind of stories marriages that have gone awry.
Mm-hmm.
And then he suggests tips and tools as to how to mitigate these the harshness of marriages. And he talks about this idea of like, he doesn't call it this principle, but I the way I'd explain it is like death by a thousand cuts. There's this couple where kind of the husband just stopped buying her favorite cereal, and that was kind of the one thing that he did for her all these years,
mm-hmm.
where he would buy the cereal, and that was kind of like a romantic gesture. And anytime that the cereal would be almost out, then he would take time out of his day, and he would go and to maybe Superstore or Walmart, even if it's 9 p.m. and they're supposed to go to bed, he would get it.
Mm-hmm.
But once he stopped doing that, just that was kind of the beginning of their marriage falling apart. And he goes deep into it, and
it's interesting that you actually bring up something like so mundane as cereal, because like a very basic example from my own life is Ryan gets up before me every day, and he usually will turn my hair straightener on for me, and then by the time that I come downstairs, it's already heated up and it's good to go, and I can just use it. And he stopped doing it for a while, and I started thinking to myself, like, why is he doing this to me? Like, doesn't he know that I need, like, this is part of my routine? And I sort of had to check myself and be like, okay, maybe there's a reason why he's stopped doing it. There was no reason. He just forgot, and, it became habit. But then I said something to him, and it was just a simple, like, are you getting up 5 minutes later or something like that? How come you've stopped turning my hair straightener on? And it was just I've just forgotten to do it. And then he remembered ever since.
There we go.
It's just, it's something so simple, but I could have let that fester if I didn't talk to him about it. Or you could have,
okay, he's not turning my hair straightening, what's it, iron?
Yeah.
On, then I'm not going to do this service for him. And then you guys just keep going back at each other. And the next thing you know, you're at a divorce attorney's office.
Absolutely.
And it's just, there's so many stories I've heard like that. And in case you're wondering why I'm reading that stuff, I keep hearing all the time that the biggest predictor for a person's happiness is their marriage, a happy, strong, robust marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just been consuming books on relationships, because I think that's kind of the most important thing. It even goes above jobs and above financial security.
Absolutely.
A marriage can really combat a lot of ailments in life. Mm-hmm. And it can really save us from a lot of financial burden and be able to live a fulfilling life and and it's just good for the kids too.
It is, but it's good for every aspect of life, because there's also other people who decide never to get married, and they make a conscious decision. It's a lot more increasing now that a lot of women decide that they don't want to pursue a relationship; they want to pursue their career or something.
I've heard of that. It's terrible. I mean, it's not. Because certainly women have autonomy, and I'm in no kind of position.
It's not my preference.
Yeah, but I think people are forgetting that being a mother is a very noble thing to do, and it's just that feeling, that maternal side, and kind of being in charge of the next generation is such a noble act, and it's like an important duty in society, for the world. And that's that purpose of, you're in charge of this other human being, this other life. And while sure, career is important, and I think that like every person has the right to pursue their career, but I think a lot of people I've heard online too are just bashing on kind of motherhood, and I don't want to be a mom. And there's this girl on TikTok that's gone viral, and she has she calls it The List, and it's like it's a list of why you shouldn't be a mom, and on that it says it's a literal parasite. Like, what? like no, this is like another life that's relying on you, like this.
No, it's that's interesting. I work with somebody who has chosen to be a single mom. She went through in vitro and decided to be a mom, like all on her own.
Good for her.
Oh man, like she some of the stories that she has just like knocks my socks off. Like, I applaud her all the time. Like, and her son is just like the cutest little thing, and he's just going to be such a great little gentleman. But like, I mean, even with somebody like her, learning about relationships and learning about marriage and whatnot is so beneficial, because even if she never embarks into a relationship, with a husband, she's always going to interact with other relationships in her life. And so there's always going to be other aspects where she's going to need to know how to have a successful relationship, because even if it's just a coworker relationship, if you're disrespectful to that person, if it doesn't matter what aspect that relationship is in, whether, it's a friend or, a husband and a wife, or like a parent or an in-law, it doesn't matter. If you are disrespectful, in that relationship, it's not going to flourish. And so, although like, I agree, like there is so much nobleism that comes with like motherhood and whatnot, relationships outside of the family dynamic are still so important to be invested in and to be developed, because ultimately, like, that's what society is. It's just a whole bunch of relationships all interwoven together. And the stronger our relationships are, the more cohesive and the better our society is. And I think that's one of the problems today, is that there isn't as much of an emphasis on relationships and why they're so important. Because we're just such a self society. Everything is just so quick and about the individual.
Divorce rates compared from, I don't know whether because it was less acceptable and it was viewed as a way of kind of quitting and people viewed you as lower, where divorce back then when my parents were young, that was like unspeakable. But now it seems to be, like every other person that I talk to on my campus at work, their parents seem to be divorced, and multiple times too. And even in the statistic in the book, it said that it's like 56% of people in the United States are divorced. But then he talks about the percentage where people do stay just for the kids, and there are people that stay in for the religious reasons, and it's actually much higher if every single person that was unhappy were to pursue. But then that gives you a 10% of people that are unhappy, and then a 56% divorce rate, which leaves you with what, like 40% of people that are actually in happy, fulfilling relationships. And going back to what I said, that's the biggest predictor for a person's happiness. That's gotta be that's a big concern, because these are the people that are raising kids, right?
Yeah.
It's just, I think it all goes back to that family lifestyle and kind of where I don't even know the solution, right? Because you could say, is it the trauma that they went through? Is it just maybe we all need therapy, or is it just goes back to maybe the time? Like, should the mom stay home the whole time, and should we go back? And it's just, there's all these different scientists and just experts that I listen to, and everybody seems to have a different answer.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think it's communication. I know that sounds so,
it's so cliche. I know, it's just so cliche, but
people just need to tell people the truth more, because I feel that death by 1,000 cuts, then even in like an employment relationship, I've heard so many times that, I wish upper management would be more transparent. And, what is the message behind that? What are people actually saying? Like, I wish I knew the whole message. I wish everything was communicated to me. Yeah. That's basically what people are saying when they're like, I wish so-and-so was more transparent. I want the whole message. I just want to be communicated with. And so, it really comes back down to communication. So, but I do applaud you for reading the book on divorces, though. No, it's weird. I tell my friends, they're like, "Why are you reading that? Like, you're like still in your early time."
So, I'm still navigating this next chapter of my life. I didn't know if I really wanted to share about it, but for quite some time, I was sort of actually involved in a commercial cult. And
commercial cult?
It's
like
it's something that
scheme.
I'm still sort of processing and going through. But I've come to accept to the point now that I was actually involved in a cult for quite some time. And one of the practices that they employ is not to speak to people who were once involved and then no longer are involved. And a lot of that is because they preach that if you listen to us and you follow all of our steps and stuff, you're going to be super successful. And that's not the case. It's quite proven elsewhere that it's like totally debunked. But when you're involved in the trenches and like the brainwashing and everything like that, like you truly believe what they're saying. And so one of the things that they say is like, anybody that has left are lost souls basically, and they're never going to make anything of their life. And so don't even waste your time speaking to them. And growing up, I used to always say like, oh, I have such good life perspective because I've learned from my brother's mistakes. I didn't make the mistake. My brother made the mistake and I learned from that mistake. And so I would always tell people like, talk to people that have failed at things so that you can understand, why they failed, where did they go wrong? And then you can learn from their mistakes. So by you reading this book about, divorces and stuff like that, it gives you a really good perspective of what not to do. And, coming out of that whole experience, it's sort of similar as what's going on in the States with them banning books in the libraries and people saying, as soon as they ban a book in the library, find it and read it. Because there's a reason. There's a reason why they don't want you having that information. There's something that isn't there. Like they're blocking some communication from you. And so as soon as there's a break in communication, there's an issue. There's a reason for some distrust. So if ever anybody is ever telling you not to listen to somebody or not to speak to somebody, unless if that person is straight out
criminal
or has intentions to like physically harm somebody, you should probably still, take that information in, take it with a grain of salt, trust yourself, trust your gut, but never ever let anybody tell you that any topic is off limit, especially because it is opposite of what it is that you want. So I really applaud you for reading about divorces, because if you want to have a successful marriage, I do think it's important to understand what makes them unsuccessful.
I like talking to the parents, the single moms, the single dads, and I don't want to pry, but I kind of do sometimes, and I'm willing to listen to what they share. And actually, most of the time, all the time, actually, the parents, the single parents, they're the ones that are divorced, that have gone through terrible marriages, tell me what went wrong. And they tell me advice on like the kids and what to look out for and kind of the family dynamic. And just even going back to cults, it's just, they tell you that, oh, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. And people just want to be a part of something. And that's why people join that stuff. And I was roped into that almost. Like I spent like $200 and I was devoting some time, and it was all about talks about like financial freedom and how you have all these rules established, but it's all BS. And then when you realize it, and you look back on your actions, why did I believe that? Right. And it's just, but then you live and you learn, right? And then,
well, and that's also another thing too, is that like, if ever you are in any of those situations, unfortunately people do end up getting divorced. If you are in the situation where you do get divorced, that doesn't mean that life's over for you. No. There's always, other opportunities for you, and you can learn from that past relationship and say, this is where I made a mistake and this is where I'm going to go forward. But when you enter into something and you realize that it's not good for you, whether it's a cult or if it's a marriage or if it's a job, if you just if you let your pride get in the way, you're never going to be able to learn your lesson from that.
True. So how do you ensure open and effective communication in your relationships, both with your spouse and your children?
So, with those weekly meetings, however, like there's no way that we can only talk once a week. Like for one, we see each other every day, and then there's always things coming up left, right, and center. But something that Ryan and I have tried really hard to maintain is sort of like a WhatsApp thread for different topics in our life. And so where, you're able to label your groups in WhatsApp. And so they're just conversations between Ryan and I, but like we have one that's labeled for our older girl and one that's labeled for our younger. And then we have one that's just, between us. And sometimes it's something as basic as like, the shoe size is this size this week or whatever. Or sometimes it's a little bit more complex things like, today's Wednesday and it's the third time that, my younger daughter has had an accident. She's supposed to be fully potty trained. Something's going on. And then, it sort of gives both of us the opportunity to sort of raise that flag and pay attention the rest of the week if we need to. Or also, sometimes I'll just be bored and I'll be going through there, going back. And because sometimes it's something like, oh, she said she wanted this for Christmas. So put it somewhere, write it down somewhere because you're definitely going to forget by then. And then, you can refresh it. So, like I said, like having those meetings are great, but then also we have multiple different lines of communication, multiple different forms of communication so that it's always available, like whatever it is, whether it's, sometimes I have to give him a call and just talk to Ryan about something. But then I know like, well, if he can't answer, I leave a voicemail. And part of it is learning how to communicate with my partner, because I know like if I were to call Ryan and not leave him a voicemail, that would give him cause for concern, because like in today's day and age, who phones people nowadays? Like, I mean, like you don't even phone pizza anymore. Like, did you know that you call for? I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I still call. I still call here and there.
Yeah.
Do people not call as much anymore?
Well, everybody skips the dishes and Uber Eats now.
Yeah,
so
that's fair. Because like the more digital space, right? It's just why do the voice when you can just order online? Would have to but go on a taster.
Yeah, well, but exactly, right? So like, I mean, if I'm calling my husband instead of sending him a text message, that's cause for urgency, really, when you think about the hierarchy of communication. If you're calling somebody, it should be more important than a text message. Some people don't have that mentality anymore. They text for everything. But I understand my spouse and I know how he communicates, right? And so I know that if I were to call him for something, if I were to call him in the middle of the day for something that is not worthy of a phone call, he's going to be annoyed with me, and rightfully so, because it doesn't follow that sort of hierarchy. Whereas like I could have sent that as a text message. Like I know in office environments, there's always a running joke, how many times could this meeting have been an email? Like same thing. Amber, this voice or this phone call could have been a text message. So, I understand that. And then I understand like if I don't get through to him on voicemail, even if I just feel like it's because I just want to talk to him, sending him that voicemail and just touching base, or if it is an emergency, sending a follow-up text message, give me a call, it's an emergency. And so just maintaining all of those multiple different lines of communication and understanding, again, just how he operates. And then as well, vice versa. He knows like if he is trying to get in touch with me, if he needs to get in touch with me immediately, he can pick up the phone call and I'll answer immediately. But at the same time, if he's calling me just because he wants to tell me about like a sports highlight or something like that, or if he's calling me because he's like, hey, I want to go to a movie on Sunday and I'm out at the grocery store or whatnot, it's like, why are you calling me for this? Like, we could have talked about this when we got home. Like, why didn't you write this down for later?
Fair.
So like, it's understanding that like, there are multiple different lines and forms of communication, but then understanding how each of us operate with those.
Yeah, that's fair. You're able to there's those weekly meetings, but then there's also kind of the subtleties of, okay, like the call, what does that call mean? And then like leaving that voicemail, not leaving that voicemail, what does that mean? And being able to uh being able to communicate that properly and lay down that, oh, this is what this means. It doesn't mean this when I say that, or this when I do this,
Yeah.
and kind of just working with what suits both of you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so
And then
what,
also as well, neither of us are afraid to like
Mhm.
tell the other person that like we don't understand. Like if Ryan is trying to tell me something, there's been times where I'm like, I like you need to come back to me at this for another time, because sometimes I'm just too busy and too preoccupied and my brain can't handle the information right now. Or the way that he is trying to communicate to me is not translating, because women and men are very different. And so he can get excited about something and he can try to explain it to me in like his terminology,
yeah.
and my female brain is just not understanding anything about why.
Mhm.
Like, why are you even telling me this, for one? And so sometimes it's like, okay, like I can see this is important to you. Like, this is important. Why don't you think about this for a little bit and then come back and we'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
And then maybe like you can think about it a little bit more from like my perspective and how I would understand the situation, because I really don't understand what you're saying to me right now.
Fair.
And it goes both ways. There's been times where it's been a lot of the times it's more or less for Ryan. It's more or less like I'm busy. I have a task that I need to get completed right now. And if you start talking to me about this, we're not going to be able to communicate effectively because my brain is somewhere else.
Yeah, you need to have good timing too, because if you just when you just lay down the bad news after he has gone, he just arrived from work, or when he's at work busy with something, and you want to discuss certain things that do require more mental power, more mental capacity, when maybe he got 6 hours of sleep last night,
Mhm.
maybe the boss is nagging, maybe there's just the balance sheets, they're not as, they're not up to kind of today's date, and you're behind in certain things, and
Maybe
being
it's
able to
34
kind of,
degrees outside
yeah,
and I just
yeah,
cannot think.
yeah. So being able to say, hey, this is the boundary. Let's talk about it later.
Mhm.
And with navigating conflict, how do you handle conflicts or disagreements within the family, and what advice would you give to others facing similar situations?
So conflict usually arises from misunderstandings. Um, Very seldom is it because somebody truly wants to inflict pain or hardship upon somebody else. So I think the biggest thing with any sort of conflict, even if it's my toddler screaming at my face that she doesn't want to put her shoes on, and it's raining outside, so sorry, you're wearing your shoes. It's not a malicious intent behind that. Um, there's something else. And so that's sort of the basis, I guess, for navigating conflict in our house, is that when there is a tense moment or whatnot, it's not because somebody wants to inflict pain or hardship on somebody else. It's because they're uncomfortable, they're afraid, they're scared, they're worried. There's something else going on underneath the surface. And we just don't know how to communicate that. And so our flight or fight response is coming. And so it's acknowledging where it's coming from. And then also sometimes acknowledging that, like, everybody is different. And so sometimes you can cause a conflict with somebody else and you don't even know that you're doing it because you personally don't think it's a problem. That's something that was really difficult for Ryan and I to navigate very early on in our relationship, because we did have two vastly different upbringings. And so sometimes he would do things and I would think he was doing it as an attack on me personally, or because I did something that offended him. And like, he just was truly oblivious to the way that I was feeling. And he didn't know that he was making me angry until all of a sudden it got to a point where I had blown up or like I was visibly upset. And so it took a long time to get to a point where both of us understood that when we get to a point of conflict, although it's tense, it's not because we want to inflict pain upon the other person. It's there's a problem that needs to be solved. And so if we let our ego get in the way and think, oh, well, they have a problem with me, or they're angry with me, or they're trying to hurt me or come at me, that's when it furthers that break in communication, because you don't give the other person the ability to sort of share their opinion or their perspective. And so it just breaks down from there. So like understanding that like when there is a conflict, if you don't have the uncomfortable conversation of where is this conflict coming from, it's just going to get worse. But because if you truly believe that somebody is causing you harm because they enjoy it or they want to, or they just simply don't care about you, it doesn't matter how much conversations you have with that person, it's not going to go anywhere. But like we're a family, we love each other, and it is an unconditional emotion. And so knowing that, like, we know that if there's a problem, it's not because we want to hurt each other. There's something else behind that. So I think that's the biggest thing, is that when there's conflict, our human nature is just to be in defense mode and sort of assume sort of the cheapest emotion, which is like vengeance. And so when there's conflict, it's really hard to separate yourself from it and understand that it's not personal. Even if it feels personal and it's like directed at you personally, it's not personal, and you need to you need to get to the bottom of where it's coming from so that you can resolve it.
Yeah, when somebody makes a mistake in all relationships, that does happen. It almost just always happens. With the longer you are in a relationship with someone, familiarity breeds contempt, because
absolutely,
you do get comfortable and you say certain things you shouldn't have. The emotions give in, and going into it, if you do want to resolve the conflict with a mindset of, oh, this person was out to get me, like it was premeditated, they're guilty, I need to punish them, of course you're not going to get anywhere. But if you're going into the conflict with, this is another flawed human being just like myself, and they are going through life just like me for the very first time, grappling with resentment, past traumas, with the friction of existence, and just the negative thoughts that do come. Am I a good enough mother? Am I a good enough human being in this world? Am I enough? Am I loved? And it's all these thoughts that come up in our heads. And to be able to recognize that, hey, this isn't just going on in my head. This is also going on in my father and my mother and my husband and my wife and my son, daughter, coworker.
Yeah. And my boss. Yeah. That's one thing a lot of times people have a hard time understanding, is that like your superiors, they have doubts as well. It's also the first time that they are experiencing this moment in time. And so like your superiors, like as in your boss at work or your parents or your older siblings, it can be them as well that have these doubts that, like you can have as much schooling as you can get, but like you're still doing this for the first time, like this life thing, right? Like it doesn't matter how much teaching you have or how much more teaching somebody else has compared to you, they still are going to have those doubts. Everybody has doubts.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the Long-Term Podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Advin. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you today.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate you. I appreciate the platform that you've given me and that you've given so many other people, and that I know you're going to continue to give other people. This is number 68.
68. Yes.
68.
Yes.
Yeah. And I can't wait to see, the next 68 and the 68 after that. It's going to be amazing. So thank you so much for having me on and giving me the platform. And I can't wait to see where this goes and what else you have planned for this.
Thank you so much. And as always, to everyone listening and watching, there is a place for you in this chaotic world. Never lose hope. Strengthen your faith and keep it long term. Peace. Amber Buchaski.
Buchaski.
Okay. Thank you again.
Thanks, guys.